Some cars were built to win races, some were built to sell, and then there's this very small, very strange group that was built by people who looked at a blank sheet of paper and thought, what if we just ignored every rule that's ever existed? Some were disasters, some were 50 years ahead of their time, and a couple make me genuinely wonder what those engineers were drinking when they drew up those blueprints. Let's get into it. Number 12, 1956 Buick Centurion. It's 1956. Eisenhower is in the White House, rock and roll is brand new, and Buick shows up to the GM Motorama with a car that has no rear-view mirror. None. Instead, they mounted a television camera on the rear and beamed a live picture to a small screen inside the dashboard. In 1956, the Centurion was a full jet-age fantasy, a plexiglass bubble canopy, a 325 horsepower V8 underneath, and a body so low and swept back it looked like it was already moving at 60 miles an hour while sitting completely still. Never went into production. Of course it didn't, but it gave a whole generation of American kids a very specific dream. And compared to what's coming next on this list, the Centurion almost looks sensible. Number 11, 1941, Chrysler Thunderbolt. Before Ford ever put the name Thunderbird on anything, Chrysler built this. And I want you to really sit with that for a second, because what Ralph Roberts designed for LeBaron in 1941 had a fully retractable hardtop that disappeared electrically into the bodywork. At a time when most American cars still had running boards, hidden headlights, flush door handles, no visible body seams anywhere. A 323 cubic inch straight six running the whole show. 6 were built by hand. They were never meant for a showroom floor. And the fact that one of them still exists and still runs today feels like finding a time machine in someone's barn. The 40s were wilder than we give them credit for. And speaking of cars that almost rewrote history, number 10, 1948, Tucker Torpedo. If there's one car on this list that genuinely makes me angry every time I think about it, it's this one. Preston Tucker built a car in 1948 with a padded dashboard, a center headlight that swiveled with the steering wheel, a windshield engineered to pop out harmlessly in a crash instead of shattering, and a rear-mounted engine pulled directly from a Franklin helicopter. Safety features that didn't become standard anywhere else for another 20 years. The flat six made 166 horsepower, and it was smooth as glass. He built 51 before the government, pushed by the established automakers, shut him down through a securities fraud case most historians now consider politically motivated. 47 survive today. Every single one is a rolling argument about what American cars could have been. Number 9, 2002 Lincoln Blackwood. I've seen some miscalculations in this industry over the decades, but the Lincoln Blackwood might be my personal favorite example of a company hearing what customers wanted and then building the exact opposite. People said they wanted a luxury truck. Lincoln delivered a pickup with a carpeted bed you weren't supposed to get dirty, genuine wood paneling, a sticker price north of $52,000, and a payload capacity that would embarrass a garden cart. One color only, black. No towing package, no off-road capability. They only sold it in the United States, and Ford killed it after a single model year with around 3,300 units built. Beautiful, baffling, a mistake so committed it almost becomes admirable. Number 8, 1995 Chrysler Atlantic. Some cars aren't about horsepower or lap times. The Atlantic wasn't built for any of that. It was built out of longing, pure, unapologetic automotive longing. Chrysler's designers looked at the great French pre-war Bugattis, the Type 57 Atlantic, the cars that drove through 1930s Europe like rolling sculptures, and said, "We want to feel that way again, right now, in 1995. The result was a hand-hammered aluminum concept with a straight-eight engine assembled from two four-cylinder units, 375 horsepower, and proportions so long and flowing they made everything else in the parking lot look like a mistake. It never went into production and never will. But stand next to one in a museum and you'll understand why some things don't need to be real to matter. Number 7, 1953, GM Firebird 1, XP-21. General Motors looked at a jet fighter in 1952 and thought, that's a car. The Firebird 1 wasn't gasoline-powered. It wasn't diesel. It ran on a genuine gas turbine engine, the kind of technology pulled directly from aviation, producing 370 horsepower through a drivetrain that no one had ever tried to domesticate before. A single-seat cockpit under a fighter plane canopy, a fin on the back that was purely decorative and absolutely magnificent. The handling was, let's say, unconventional. Turning right was a fundamentally different experience than turning left. But that wasn't really the point. GM was making a statement. We will build anything. Don't test us. And they meant every word of it. 3 more Firebird concepts followed over the next decade. None of them were boring either. Number 6, 1976 Dodge Charger, Olympia beer. Here's something that sounds completely made up, but absolutely isn't. In 1976, a Dodge Charger, an American muscle car wearing Olympia beer sponsorship livery, showed up to compete at Le Mans, the 24 Hours of Le Mans, the endurance race where Ferrari and Porsche go to prove their serious engineering operations. The Charger's 400 cubic inch V8 was making around 310 horsepower, built for short bursts of American thunder, not for 24 hours of precision endurance racing where fuel management and brake temperatures determine everything. It was gloriously, unapologetically out of its element. A muscle car wearing beer branding on a circuit built for a different kind of car entirely. And somehow, that image is more memorable than any podium finish. Number 5, 1980, AMC Eagle. You want to talk about a car that was laughed at by the entire industry and then quietly became the template for how half the world drives today. American Motors in 1980 was genuinely broke. Not tough quarter broke, but fighting for survival broke. And from that desperation came the Eagle, a regular AMC Concord station wagon with a Jeep 4-wheel drive system shoehorned underneath it. The 258 cubic inch straight six made around 110 horsepower. People made jokes. The thing looked like a station wagon wearing hiking boots. 30-some years later, every crossover SUV on the planet is this exact idea with a bigger budget. The Subaru Outback, the Ford Edge, every Volvo wagon you've ever seen stuck behind a minivan on the highway. They all owe something to this awkward little AMC that nobody took seriously. Number 4, 1935, Stout Scarab, William Bushnell. Stout was an aviation engineer, which explains everything about what he built in 1935. When Stout sat down to design an automobile, he ignored the entire tradition of what a car was supposed to look like. Rear-mounted Ford V8, monocoque body construction, at a time when virtually every car on Earth was still body-on-frame, and an interior that looked less like a passenger car and more like a sitting room, a folding table, movable chairs, actual open floor space. 9 were built. Henry Ford himself bought one. The minivan wouldn't be invented again for another 50 years. Stout was just living in a different decade than everyone else and couldn't be bothered to explain himself. Number 3, 1982, Dodge Rampage. All right, this one's weird in a completely different way than the jet engine concepts and the TV camera Buicks. No futurism here, just a genuinely strange decision made by practical people trying to solve a practical problem. The Rampage was a pickup truck built on a front-wheel drive economy car platform, the same bones as the Dodge Omni, a 2.2-liter 4-cylinder making 94 horsepower, hauling a cargo bed that could, optimistically, manage around 1,000 pounds. In a world where the El Camino existed and actual trucks existed, Dodge built this instead. It was oddly sensible for city driving and deeply, profoundly unusual to look at. The kind of vehicle that makes you think someone halfway through the project said, "Are we sure about this?" and was outvoted. Number 2, 1959 Cadillac Cyclone. Short one, but there's no version of this list that leaves it off. The Cyclone had twin jet pod nose cones housing actual radar equipment designed to detect obstacles and warn the driver automatically. A clear bubble canopy, bodywork so extreme it made even the famously outrageous 1959 Cadillac production cars look restrained. This was Detroit's space-age optimism turned up to absolute maximum, the unshakable belief that the future would be shiny, aerodynamic, and full of gadgets. Almost none of it came true the way they imagined, but it was magnificent about being wrong. Number 1, 1963 Chrysler turbine car. And here we are, the strangest, most ambitious, most only-in-America car ever built. Chrysler actually made turbine-powered automobiles and handed them to regular American families for real-world testing. 55 cars, designed by Ghia in Italy, turbine engine developed entirely in-house by Chrysler engineers, loaned out to 203 households across the country. The turbine ran on almost anything combustible: diesel, jet fuel, kerosene, vegetable oil. They officially tested it on tequila during a Mexican tour. The engine spins to 44,600 revolutions per minute and makes 130 shaft horsepower with no conventional transmission involved. At the end of the program, Chrysler crushed 46 of the 55. 9 exist today, mostly in museums, and every single one still runs. No car before or since has ever asked ordinary American families to live this far ahead of their time, or paid this high a price for asking.